So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the work I've been doing for the past 3 years. And my PhD is titled Capturing Value from External New Product Development Collaboration, the Significant Role of Market Information Processing. First, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the motivation for this, sort of how this came about. And one of the first ideas I had for this started before I was even a PhD student, when I had the opportunity to talk to a senior vice president of a large Danish mortgage broker. And we talked about the role of open innovation, meaning taking external sources like customer input or supplier input and using that to develop new products. And in his firm, he had been in charge of such processes, but was very skeptical. He said that, first of all, while customer collaboration, which he had tried, they found that it was very hard to motivate the customers. Customers, when they want a mortgage, are actually interested in a house. Because they want a house, they want money. And because they want money, they're interested in a mortgage. So his argument was that people are only interested in his product 4 or 5 times in their life. You're not going to get them to participate on a regular basis. In regards to collaborating with other sources, such as suppliers, he said that actually, in many ways, they didn't have that many. And it was hard to collaborate with others because they're such a heavily regulated industry. And collaborating with, for example, competitors was also difficult because they are such a service-based industry that it's very easy for others to copy their products. So overall, he found that for using open innovation, it was actually more expensive and time-consuming than what he got out of it for products. So with this in mind, I wanted to examine whether or not open innovation, which has been such a large theme in academia and in practice over the past 10, 15 years, was actually something that was universally applicable. So I went into the literature, and I'm going to tell you very briefly a little bit about the conceptual background for this study and the literature gap. So for this study, I focused on the firm which is engaged in new product development. And I wanted to examine whether or not there was an effect of collaborating with customers, competitors, suppliers, universities, and other external actors, such as external consultancies. So now I'm going to briefly go through what we know from literature is the benefits and some of the problems of collaborating with these 5 different types of external sources. First of all, collaborating with customers. Collaboration with customers have been shown to be a great benefit for the firm in new product development, but not without its challenges. So it can benefit the firm with improved design, improved marketing, but customers are usually only useful up to a certain point. If you're trying to do something very new, research, among others, Callahan and Lashley from 2004, indicates that it drops off. That if it becomes very new, the customers don't have the frame of reference to effectively engage. With competitors, competitive collaboration can be very useful for developing standards, technological platforms, but firms are usually very of engaging with competitors, which I guess is logical because they're afraid that their information, that their knowledge is going to be taken and used by the competitors. So while this is a very discussed topic, we are not that certain about how much competitor collaboration actually benefits the firm. The next point is supplier integration. While research have shown that suppliers can benefit the new product development process immensely, that's using suppliers because they're already known to the firm is actually some of the easiest collaboration you can engage in. That suppliers have already knowledge about the products you're developing, and they can take some of the supply chain issues of developing new products and help you address them early on. However, firms should also be wary of engaging too much with suppliers, because this can actually make them too reliant on them, and suppliers change over time. Then there's collaboration with universities. Now, university collaboration is also a great benefit, especially in the early parts of a new product development process. So when you're trying to do something really new, engaging with universities about breakthrough products, the very new technologies that they are working on, can be very beneficial. However, firms should be aware that their motivations for engaging in this is very different. So universities are engaged in exploration of new topics, and the firm is very interested in the exploitation part. And finally, I've also looked at other external sources, such as innovation platforms used on the internet and external consultancies and the like. However, not that much research exists that addresses what happens when you collaborate with many or all of these at the same time. What we have so far in the open innovation literature is very much snapshots taken from different industries and small samples. Actually, in my study, I only found around 17 studies that addressed what happened when there were more involved at the same time. Belderos, Correa, and Lokshin in the 2006 paper looked at both customer and supplier collaboration. Nioto and Santa Maria in 2007 added a university and competitors. And Lawson and Salter in 2006 has looked at all of these and even took a more fine-grained approach. Now, extending Lawson and Salter's framework, I also wanted to examine the effect of what happened when the intensity of collaboration was taken into account, meaning that when you not only collaborate with a lot of people, but also when you use them a lot. So there's both a breadth of your collaboration and a depth of your collaboration present. However, what firm-level capabilities need to be present for this to actually work? Now, Lawson and Salter proposed using absorptive capacity, which is also a term from literature, as the main indicator for how good you are at taking information from external sources and integrating into the firm. However, there are several problems with the absorptive capacitive literature. Mainly, that it's a good conceptual framework, but in terms of how they measure how you integrate external sources, I think there is a problem. See, absorptive capacity is usually measured along the variable of R&D intensity, meaning that they measure it by looking at how much money you invest in your internal R&D as an indicator for how good you are at actually collaborating externally. See, I don't think we actually capture what capabilities need to be present with that variable. So therefore, I propose the integration of market information processing. However, this is not the only gap that exists in the open innovation literature. There's also the conceptual problem. The open innovation concept still lacks clarity. There's empirical problems that most of the literature is only a small number of firms, and we need some large-scale studies that look at the effect of open innovation across the entire industry. Reasons for why open innovation sometimes fail and sometimes succeed are not well known. And we still need more evidence how open innovation actually benefits the NPD process. And these 4 areas are also highlighted by Henry Chesbrough, the father of the open innovation term, in his 2014 book. So, these are the overall questions I'm going to try and answer in this study. First of all, how does the intensity of external collaboration affect product development performance? Second, to what extent does the firm-level capability of market information processing impact the relationship between intensity of external collaboration and new product development performance? And finally, how does market innovativeness affect new product development when multiple collaborators are present? So, the conceptual model. In this study, to answer these three questions, I developed 11 hypotheses, and I'm going to go through them now. My first hypothesis, here I look at the intensity of external collaboration, meaning with whom you collaborate and how much do you use them in your product development process, and how this affects new product development performance. Then I add market information processing. I look at how good is the firm at collecting information, meaning how good are they at identifying external collaborators and collecting information from these people, and how good are they at disseminating this through the rest of the firm. So, to do this, I add the two variables. First, I wanted to test if the ability to generate market information, meaning to identify and collect information from them, had an effect on new product performance. And I hypothesized based on literature that it would be a positive effect. The better you are at it, the better the performance. Likewise, I also examined information dissemination and hypothesized that the better you are at it, the better your performance. Then, as a third step, I wanted to see if you were good at both, if that actually increased the performance, the effect on performance. Now it gets a little tricky. So I had the intensity of external collaboration's effect on performance, and the same for information generation. But I also hypothesized that if you're good at generating information, you can actually get more out of your intensity of external collaboration, meaning that this effect increases when I moderate for information generation. And likewise, that the effect of intensity of external collaboration increases when I add information dissemination. Then I added market innovativeness. And market innovativeness is really a question of how new is it? To the market, the industry, and the firm was the main three areas I addressed in this research. So, and I did this because in new product development, how new your product is will have a significant impact both on probably how it will perform, but also how hard it is and how much uncertainty and complexity there is when trying to develop it. So, first, for model completeness, I have an effect here of market innovativeness on new product portfolio performance that I didn't hypothesize, but that I have included anyway. The effect I wanted to see was if the intensity of external collaboration was positive, what happens when you add market innovativeness? And I hypothesize that this effect actually decreases because a significant level of market innovativeness is also a significant level of uncertainty and complexity. And the same argument actually holds for the next two, that for the market information processing variables, this is also going to be harder when you add market innovativeness because you're trying to identify collaborators and collect information from it and disseminate it in a situation where there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of complexity on which way you're actually going with your product. Now, for the final two hypotheses, I took the already established interaction I had where I said intensity of external collaboration increases when market information generation is present. And then I say this effect should actually then decrease when we add market innovativeness, again due to the complexity and uncertainty involved. And the same I argue for information dissemination. So this is the complete model. 11 hypotheses tested. So the variables and the samples, meaning how did I build these variables that I use in my model, and what is the overall sample I use to test it. So returning to this conceptual framework, first I have my dependent variable, NPD portfolio performance, which is a measure of the impact of market share, sales, and revenue. Then I have the intensity of external collaboration, which I measure along the lines of, do you collaborate with customers, and how much do you collaborate with competitors, and how much do you use them, and the same for suppliers, universities, and other market actors. Market information generation. I examined by asking the firm was asked if there was clear criteria for examining partners, and if the partner selection was based on analysis. Also, if they had comprehensive and established methods for actually getting this information from them that they needed. For information dissemination, I looked at if they share information about customers, if they have effective information sharing systems established, if they communicate competitor strategies, and if they hold meetings to discuss trends about the market. Then I have the market innovativeness. Here I looked at if the product they were trying to develop added new value to customers, new value to the market, if it significantly changed the market, if it attracted new customers, or significantly changed the value chain in their industry. Then I have some control variables that I suspected might have an impact. So I added firm size. So I wanted to see if it impacted the overall model if we looked at how big the firm was. Since this data was collected in both Austria and Denmark, I also added geography to see if there was a difference between the two countries. Then formalization, and in this I looked at if they have very established processes. Meaning, and this is usually true for larger established firms, is it formalized when they make decisions, or is it on a more ad hoc basis? Then I added turbulence. I wanted to see if there was significant technology or market turbulence in their industry, if that would impact these relationships. I also wanted to test if there was a difference if they were business-to-business focused or business-to-consumer focused, because the choice of customers they had might actually impact how they innovate. And finally, I added technological innovativeness. Since the focus here is market innovativeness, I also added technological innovativeness to see if the product, if it was very new technology, if it changed the technology, if that might have an impact. So, data collection. This study used a large data set that has been used previously. It was part of a benchmarking study, and the firms in this that actually participated here paid to participate, which I think increases the validity of my study, because we can be reasonably sure that because they participated to actually get information about how to improve their own innovation processes, that what the answers they have provided are reasonably correct, as opposed to if they just did it as a service to the researchers. As I said, the data was collected in both Denmark and Austria. It was questionnaire-based, and the validity of the topics were confirmed with both literature and practitioners. And overall, this data set, because it's large, it contains 60 topics in innovation management. And I only use around 4, but there has been significant other research using the other aspects of the data set. It's very general about innovation management. So the data I pulled from this data set, I ended up with 263 firms from 19 industries. I had one senior manager from each firm and 3 to 5 team members. And to avoid biases in the answers, I separated the data set so only the senior managers answered the performance variable, the NPD portfolio performance, and the others answered about the processes and the information sharing. all were involved with NPD projects. Around half, little more than half were from manufacturing industries, and the rest are spread out across service and agriculture and different industries. And all the questions were posed on a 5-point Likert scale. So, the results. What did I actually find out? So, here's the model. So this was a stepwise regression where I started by adding the control variables, had an adjusted R around 5%. Then I added the independent variables here, which increased the value to around a little over 8. Then I added the first interaction between market information processing and the intensity of external collaboration. In the fourth model, I added market innovativeness, and then in the final model with an adjusted R of 19, I added the three-way interactions. So the interactions between intensity of external collaboration moderated by both market information processing and market innovativeness. So I had 11 hypotheses. I confirmed 5, and 5 were not significant. And then I had 1 that were significant, but didn't confirm my hypothesis. It went the other direction, and that was the first one. So based on literature, I was very sure that collaborating with a lot of people, or a lot of industry, a lot of different actors, and drawing a lot of information from them was going to benefit your performance. You were getting a lot of information. But what I actually found was that the intensity of external collaboration was negative. That when they had a lot of collaborations and they used these collaborations a lot, performance went down. Right? Information generation variables, both the generation and dissemination, as I suspected, proved to be positive and significant on performance. However, there wasn't any added effect of being good at both that I couldn't measure. And now, this I think is one of the most interesting parts of my model, is that while intensity of external collaboration on performance was negative, when I actually add a firm level capability of information generation, it turns positive. So this confirms that there are, or we can be reasonably sure that there are something going on here where you actually need some firm level capabilities, in this case information generation, to actually benefit when you collaborate a lot. Also information dissemination. I had an effect when moderated by market innovativeness. And remember, I hypothesized that information dissemination would actually become harder when market innovativeness was involved. And I got a significant result with that, indicating that when the complexity and uncertainty decreases, it also becomes harder to actually spread that information throughout the firm. Finally, and here, so intensity of external collaboration was negative. However, that effect changed if you took information generation into account. When you then add market innovativeness, the effect decreases again. Right? So what we can see here is probably that while without firm level capabilities, intensity of external collaboration is costly. It takes resources. However, if you're good at information generation, you're good at picking collaborators, you're good at drawing information from them. But that becomes harder when uncertainty and complexity increases. So I tried to map that out in a simple slope, and for time, I'm just going to hint at, here we have the most optimal result, right? The highest effect, and that is actually when you're good at generating market information, you have relatively high innovativeness, but you keep your level of external collaboration down. And also, as I said, for model completeness, I tested the direct effect of market innovativeness on the dependent variable and got a significant positive result, indicating, as I would expect actually from literature, because market innovativeness is a two-sided point here, that if you have high levels of market innovativeness, that is actually going to, in general, if you can get a product out, that product is going to perform better. So, to discuss this a little bit, I will return to the 3 questions I asked to begin with. So how does the intensity of external collaboration affect new product development performance? Obviously, you can say negatively, but I think what we're actually seeing here is a term, I think was coined by Catilla and Hua in 2002, called oversearch, meaning that you use too many resources and finding collaborators, the people that can actually help you in your new product development process, and getting information from them. Also, the next question, to what extent does market information processing impact the relationship between external collaboration and new product development performance? Well, by itself, being good at market information processing has a positive effect, as we would expect from literature. However, more interesting enough, oversearching the negative effect I had of using intensity of external collaboration appears to be mitigated if you're good at generating information. And also, of course, information dissemination was impacted on innovativeness, which also makes intuitively some sort of sense, I think, because information dissemination, spreading your information throughout the firm, becomes harder when the complexity and uncertainty is high. Right? The information you're collecting might not actually be in a form that the rest of your firm can grasp. Maybe, to keep the example very downscale, maybe they're used to spreadsheets, but you're trying to engage with customers and they're not giving you spreadsheets. They're giving you the information in the wrong type, so it becomes harder to collect. Also, it becomes harder to spread. Also, there might be a problem of the sort of the not invented here syndrome, that if you're trying to do something very new and you're getting all this information in, maybe you're meeting organizational resistance. Maybe the firm actually don't like what you're telling them, because you might be actually advocating cannibalizing existing products, or maybe some positions are going to be obsolete. So how does market innovativeness affect new product development with multiple external collaborators? Well, as I said, market innovativeness in the innovation management literature is usually seen as a positive. Being more innovative will drive performance. However, it also increases complexity across all information processes. It increases the complexity of finding people that can help you. It increases the complexity of collecting information from them, knowing what to ask them, and it increases the complexity of actually spreading that information, as I said. So, limitations in future research. First of all, a knowledge perspective, as the committee also pointed out. Usually when you work with information processing, especially in market information processing, there are 3 steps. I highlighted information collection or generation, information dissemination, and then there's also the aspect of information use. But in this study, I tried to steer a little bit clear of that, because as soon as you get into use, when you're measuring this, you also get into the point of if they integrate it into their strategies and their operations, and sort of information becomes more knowledge-based, which is also harder to measure. So for that reason, I try to keep it very strictly on the sort of the transformation from data to information and the spread of that. Then, as I said, intensity of external collaboration in my study was measured by the breadth and the depth, with whom you collaborate and how much. But I think there's also a third aspect that would be very interesting to look on in a future study, which I have just here labeled familiarity. So have you collaborated with these people before? that might also impact this performance relationship. So you could ask, if you actually know these people and have a close, continuous interaction with them, maybe the collection of information from them is easier. Also the spreading of the dissemination of the information. On the other hand, you might be so locked into the same sort of framework that you are not really, you're not getting to very new radical products. Also, a project management perspective. Like previous research, project management in a way is sort of like an underlying theme in my PhD that I don't really address directly. But since we are talking about new product development, there is a project management perspective. And I think especially something that has been labeled innovation champions or internal innovators, that stream of literature could also have a great impact on my study. We are talking about if the firm has specific people that act as key people in the innovation process, people who actually promote the innovation and collect and facilitate the collection of information from external partners, sort of like a central figure. And literature has shown that that sort of approach might actually make the collection and the dissemination easier. And finally, an intermediary perspective could also be interesting. Like innovation intermediaries, and they're often seen in the medical industry, is firms that specialize in establishing contact between external sources and the firm. And often they handle the identification of the right collaborators and the collection of information from them and give it to the firm. So if you have such a relationship present, maybe that would impact this process significantly. If there's somebody who actually helps you mitigate all this oversearch, maybe that's also a perspective that would be interesting in looking at. So, thank you.
Yeah.